The history of witch trials is one of fear, misunderstanding, and mass hysteria that spans centuries across Europe and North America. From the infamous Salem witch trials in 17th century Massachusetts to the brutal persecutions in Pendle, England and Trier, Germany. Countless lives were destroyed under the accusation of witchcraft. These trials weren't just about hunting witches, they reflected deeper societal anxieties. Economic crises, plagues, and religious fervour created an atmosphere of paranoia, where people sought scapegoats for misfortune. Tragically, the most vulnerable members of society, the poor, the elderly, and those who behaved differently, often bore the brunt of these fears. Among them were people suffering from mental illnesses, whose symptoms were deeply unsettling to those who relied on supernatural explanations. The erratic speech of a schizophrenic individual, the violent convulsions of epilepsy, or the withdrawn silence of severe depression. All of these could be interpreted as evidence of a pact with the devil. In the absence of scientific understanding, these symptoms became symbols of witchcraft and possession, leading to devastating consequences for the accused. This video will explore how ignorance, fear, and religious extremism led to the persecution of those suffering from mental illness, revealing a tragic pattern of misunderstanding that continues to have echoes in the way mental health is viewed today. Before the development of modern psychiatry, behaviours associated with mental illness were frightening and inexplicable to those who witnessed them. Conditions such as epilepsy, psychosis, depression, and neurological disorders were often perceived as evidence of supernatural forces at work. One of the most famous cases of mass hysteria and mental illness mistaken for possession was the Loudun possessions in France. In 1632, a group of Ursuline nuns exhibited erratic movements, screaming fits, convulsions, and claims of demonic possession. The cause of their behaviour remains debated. Some scholars believe it was a combination of hysteria, hallucinogenic fungus, and psychological repression. However, at the time it was seen as clear evidence of demonic forces. The priest, Urbain Grandier, was accused of witchcraft, tortured, and ultimately burned at the stake, despite no direct evidence linking him to the alleged possessions. This case illustrates how mental and neurological conditions could be twisted into supernatural narratives with fatal consequences. Epilepsy was particularly alarming due to its sudden seizures, loss of consciousness, and uncontrollable movements. Witnesses saw these episodes as signs of possession or divine punishment, especially when they occurred in communal spaces like churches or marketplaces. Some individuals with epilepsy were labelled as witches, as their convulsions were mistaken for involuntary summoning of spirits or demons. Examples of this can be found during the Salem trials, and several young girls began experiencing fits, where they fell to the floor, convulsed, and made incomprehensible sounds. Some modern researchers suggest that at least some of these symptoms may have been epilepsy-related seizures, rather than purely psychological or fake behaviour. Instead of considering a medical explanation, the Puritan community accused the women of being bewitched. Similarly, Tourette syndrome, which causes involuntary vocal tics, jerking movements, and sudden outbursts, were seen as unnatural. In societies that valued strict behavioural conformity, such erratic actions were terrifying. Without medical explanations, they could become proof of demonic influence, resulting in ostracisation, imprisonment, or execution. Women, particularly those experiencing postpartum depression or cognitive decline with age, were especially vulnerable to accusations of witchcraft. Mothers suffering from severe mood changes, intrusive thoughts, or difficulty bonding with their infants were often seen as a threat to their own children. Since motherhood was deeply tied to religious purity, any perceived emotional detachment was viewed with superstition. One tragic case was Gellis Duncan, a Scottish woman accused of witchcraft in 1590. She was a servant who reportedly fell into deep sadness and withdrew from social interaction after a suspected pregnancy. Instead of being recognised as depressed or grieving, she was accused of working with the devil and was brutally tortured into confessing to witchcraft. The suspicion toward mental illness during the witch trials was deeply rooted in the social and religious context of the time. In highly religious communities, any behaviour that defied explanation was often attributed to supernatural forces. Mental illness was not just misunderstood, it was feared as a direct challenge to the fragile sense of order that society sought to maintain. The erratic behaviour of those suffering from psychosis or severe anxiety could unsettle tightly controlled communities, making them appear dangerous or cursed. Isolation and marginalisation often compounded this suspicion. Individuals with mental illnesses were frequently ostracised from their communities, which made them easy targets for blame. In a world where conformity was crucial to survival, those who failed to adhere to social norms, either through erratic speech, uncontrollable movement, or deep withdrawal, became scapegoats for misfortune. In tightly knit societies where everyone's actions were scrutinised, those who behaved differently or failed to conform were seen as threats to social cohesion. This dynamic was exacerbated by personal grievances or rivalries, as neighbours could exploit fear of witchcraft to settle disputes or gain social advantage. Economic factors also played a role in fueling accusations. Beyond religious hysteria, there were tangible benefits to accusing someone of witchcraft. Properties and assets of the accused were often confiscated by the state and redistributed to their accusers. This created an environment where personal greed or jealousy could masquerade as moral righteousness, turning baseless accusations into a means of social and economic advancement. The psychological toll of being accused of witchcraft was profound. Many of those accused were subjected to intense scrutiny, physical torture, and public humiliation, leading to severe emotional distress. For individuals already struggling with mental illnesses, these experiences would have been unimaginably harrowing, amplifying their suffering in ways we can scarcely fathom. The methods of torture varied, but were universally cruel. Accused individuals were often subjected to swimming tests, where they were bound and thrown into water. Floating was seen as proof of guilt. Others endured brutal physical tortures such as thumb screws, the rack, or being crushed under heavy weights. These procedures were not only physically excruciating, but also psychologically devastating, forcing confessions under duress and further reinforcing the belief in their guilt. Public humiliation compounded the torment. Accused witches were paraded through towns, often bound or caged, while crowds jeered and threw objects at them. This dehumanising treatment stripped individuals of their dignity and cemented their ostracisation. For someone already dealing with the effects of mental illness, confusion, anxiety, and paranoia, this public spectacle would have been unbearable. The psychological consequences extended beyond the moment of accusation or torture. Survivors often lived in a state of permanent trauma, if they even survived at all. Families of the accused were not spared. They faced social stigma, economic ruin, and the pain of watching loved ones suffer. Children of those accused were sometimes branded as cursed, carrying the weight of these accusations for generations. These historical realities underscore the horrific intersection of ignorance, fear, and cruelty. To endure such treatment while grappling with the challenges of mental illness reveals the depths of human suffering during the witch trials. The witch trials left a lasting cultural legacy that still influences societal attitudes today, particularly toward mental illness. The association of unusual behaviours with danger and fear established patterns of marginalisation that have persisted for centuries. These trials reinforce the idea that those who did not conform to societal norms were threats to be controlled or eliminated. As mental illnesses became better understood, the stigma surrounding them did not entirely dissipate. In the 19th and 20th centuries, practices like institutionalisation and lobotomies mirrored the exclusion and dehumanisation seen during the witch trials. The underlying fear of difference and the desire to store order often outweighed compassion or understanding. Even today, echoes of this legacy remain. People with mental illnesses are often stigmatised, labelled as unpredictable or misunderstood. Terms like crazy or insane carry with them the weight of centuries of fear and discrimination. While science has advanced, the cultural memory of witch trials reminds us that fear of the unknown can lead to harmful social patterns. Rather than viewing the witch trials as a distant and archaic chapter of history, they should be seen as a reflection of societal tendencies that persist in different forms. The trials serve as a grim reminder of how fear and ignorance can shape human behaviour and lead to devastating consequences for the most vulnerable among us.